The Road to Autonomy is presented by the Road to Autonomy Index. The Road to Autonomy Index is a rules-based equity benchmark index that measures the performance of a basket of global companies that are involved in the development and commercialization of autonomy. Institutional investors and fund managers are watching megatrends that are shaping investment opportunities today. These megatrends are creating thematic investment ideas and opportunities for forward-thinking investors. We believe that one of the biggest megatrends today is autonomy. That's why we created the Road to Autonomy Index, the world's first and only pure-play index to track the thematic investment opportunity in autonomy. Follow the Road to Autonomy Index on your favorite finance app by simply typing in the ticker Autonomy. To learn more about the Road to Autonomy Index, visit roadtoautonomy.com/index. Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to welcome back Peter Ludwig, co-founder and CTO, Applied Intuition, and Yaser Khaligh, product Applied Intuition. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Grayson. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much, Grayson. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. Yaser, you're now part of a wonderful company called Applied Intuition. Peter, every time I read something about Applied, you're scaling. You're building a business, and in my opinion, you're becoming the de facto platform for all things simulation. And who knows where you're going in the future, but you're going to become the de facto platform for wherever you want to go with Applied. Yaser, you made the big decision in March this year to sell SceneBox to Applied Intuition and join this wonderful team. Why?
Yeah, well, the part of the answer is actually in the question. It's a wonderful team. I think that's probably one of the foremost reason that I joined the company. So if I want to go back to the vision of building SceneBox, my vision was enabling customers in their autonomy journey. And then the reason that we exited to Applied was exactly to double down on that vision. So I believe Applied is unique in many different ways. One of the part that was really attractive to me, it has multiple advanced products known as Applied Development Platform that has been enabling autonomy customers from simulation to synthetic data to data management. So it actually spans a large spectrum. And then one of the pain point of SceneBox customer was that, all right, now we are using your tool for computer vision workflows, but then how can you integrating with the rest of the tool set that they're using? And often it was ADP, Applied Development Platform. That was a pain point. And then we realized that we get a lot better user experience if we actually bring SceneBox in the same platform. So that was exactly to enable our customers. So that's one reason. The other reason that is that we realized that by joining a much later stage company with established customer base and trust, we can put our technology in the hand of much larger customer base. All the good reason, of course, a very talented team, A+ engineers and developers. So yeah, all the good reasons in the world to join such a company.
You have firepower now. You can integrate into the Applied platform. You have firepower to be able to scale. Peter, I remember going back to the early days of Applied to where you are today. I'll give you a giant high five. It's been truly tremendous where you're going. Yaser brought up the great line to enable customers in their autonomy journey. You and the Applied team have done wonderful things to help your customers scale their autonomy. What impact will the acquisition of SceneBox have on Applied Intuition's product strategy? Is this another pillar in your overall product strategy?
Absolutely. We're always thinking about how can we provide more value to our customers and help them really accelerate their own development even further. And SceneBox really fits into that incredibly well. When we do acquisitions, we're extremely thoughtful and extremely strategic with how they would actually fit into our portfolio and then benefit our customers. And so for SceneBox, they have a best-in-class platform for working with computer vision data and improving computer vision models. And prior to SceneBox, this was a gap in the Applied platform. And now we have this outstanding offering with SceneBox. Applied as a company, we got our start really in using simulation for test and evaluation. And we've gone much more into using simulation also for development. And then as you're developing, you don't just want to simulate, but you also want to improve your models using real world data. And that's where the whole workflow around machine learning comes in. The SceneBox technology really helps us complete that offering to benefit our customers.
I want to highlight one of your customers, if you want to vertical, you're moving into defense. You have the office in Washington, D.C. It's a really brilliant move. And I said this very publicly. The U.S. government doesn't default. So I think it becomes a great business align there for you. SceneBox was known for great UI, great customer service. Peter, how are you going to integrate SceneBox into the offering? Will it live kind of as a standalone company under the Applied umbrella, or how are you going to integrate it?
With any sort of technology acquisition, there's always a lot of complicated questions in terms of how to make the product work best with the existing platform. So in our case, the SceneBox product, which is already an outstanding product, it continues to function and its customers can continue to use it, and it's a great product. But we're also integrating that product into the Applied development platform. What that means is there are certainly core components of it which will carry over very easily. There are other components of it which we need to sort of re-engineer to work with the rest of the platform. The ultimate goal is that it's a completely seamless experience in the what we call the ADP, the Applied Development Platform.
Will your existing customers today be able to, similar to AWS, turn on SceneBox just like you want to turn on an S3 bucket, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then unlock a whole new set of workflows for machine learning model development as well.
Yeah, sir. So the integration's going well from what Peter described. When the integration's completed, how are you planning to scale? Are you going to put some of the Applied secret sauce on there and put jet fuel, or how are you planning to scale?
Yeah, I think one of the main mechanisms for SceneBox to scale is by tight integration with different type of offering that Applied has its portfolio. I give you a couple of examples. Applied has a really powerful, scalable data management solution. And then now by bringing data operations for computer vision, you can actually go as a much deeper workflow that you start from like petabytes of data generated by the vehicle and then go through curation of data sets for computer vision workflows and then go to, labeling and so on and so forth. So that's one example that now we are enabling a much more powerful workflow that can enable a larger number of customers. So the other one is that Applied also has a offering on synthetic data generation. And then this type of synthetic data generation by itself requires curation and management and visualization. And then also that would be an input of machine learning model. Now having the synthetic data generation and the solution like SceneBox, then you would be able to actually empower customers through a much more cohesive workflow for building computer vision models. So scaling comes in part of having more end-to-end workflows.
It seems that if I'm the customer, you're eliminating a lot of the friction and you're going to enable me to scale faster. Is that a correct statement there, Yaser?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, I think the point for the customers is that they really want to get to development without jumping between different tools and different platforms. And that's why SceneBox plus ADP enables our customers.
And then even going one level higher as well, every time that we can improve these workflows, that's really all about safety. And so not only is it about time to market, but if it's easier fundamentally to do some of these development tasks, you end up with better models that are safer in vehicles and can be run on, let's say, a lower cost compute. So you have a solution that is safer, better, lower cost. And of course, that's a much more competitive solution in the market.
Peter, when you mention lower cost, we're getting ready for the September IPO of ARM, and ARM is historically known for low power. It's basically a licensing business, but it's known for low power architecture. And you're seeing a movement as we electrify vehicles, we're using less power. If somebody runs a big compute in Applied, could the car can then run potentially for autonomy on lower power because of what you've been able to build inside of Applied?
Because of the advancements that we've made in development tooling for autonomous systems, this does mean that you can achieve higher performance of models that are run on lower power and generally smaller compute. Really, when you think about what's the difference between, let's say, a development computer and then embedded or production computer, the embedded computer will generally have less resources than the development machine. And then automakers, they'll want of course, to have a low cost solution in the vehicle so that the vehicle is affordable. But low cost means low compute. And so then the question is, how much functionality, how much quality and safety can you fit in this small amount of compute? And really, when you have outstanding developer tools like what we do with ADP, that allows you to just get more for your money, let's say, in terms of compute and what's actually available in these vehicles.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that this type of development of lack of better miniaturization of this type of technology, it requires iteration. You want to actually go through many cycles, and then providing cohesive tools makes that iteration cycle much faster. So you actually can get into that miniature scale, much smaller scale, much faster with better tooling.
That becomes a game changer. You look at the economics of the electric vehicle supply chain, and the OEMs are getting squeezed on the margins from the higher labor costs, the higher cost of the raw materials. Then here you come along as the consumers demand. We're seeing the data around the uptake of Ford's Blue Cruise, the uptake around Tesla Autopilot FSD, and the systems that Magna are making for Level 2. The consumers demanding Level 2 systems, and you're coming in here and saying, wait a second, we can help you save money, but we can also increase the safety. That's the win-win for the OEM. So is your core customer, Peter, for this, is this the traditional OEMs? Is this the ADAS developers? Is this the autonomous driving stack developers? Or who is this core customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, honestly, one of the things that makes our job so much fun is that we get to work with everybody in the whole industry. Our customers span literally everyone working on these systems. So we work with OEMs and suppliers and chip companies and sensor makers, really everybody in the entire value chain of any component of autonomy. They have use cases that demand really powerful simulation and development tools. And of course, we're a company that sells these tools. And so we're happy to, of course, sell and support these to anybody who wants to use them. And then really provide strong value, of course, to the companies that are using them. And so I wouldn't necessarily even say that there was like a core user. It's actually a pretty diverse set of use cases and users. Today, 17 or 18 of the top 20 OEMs use something from the Applied development platform, at least one of our tools. And that number just keeps growing as well as we make more progress.
Applied's business is healthy. I don't know any other way to say it. To your business is very healthy, and what you're clearly demonstrating just adds fuel to the fire that you are an extremely healthy, growing business. Yaser, how will the combined Applied SceneBox product offering assist autonomous driving companies to scale? Can they accelerate that, or how is it going to work?
Yeah, exactly. It is. This is what we are really focusing on: acceleration of development and improve coverage for safety. So the way that usually the whole workflow look like for a autonomous vehicle company is that you collect the data from the vehicle, you index the data, so you can search across hundreds of or thousands of hours of driving logs and petabytes of data. Then you want to find that interesting type of data that is interesting for your machine learning model to learn from, because you cannot learn from that much data. You actually have to be very selective. And then you send it to labeling. Then you have to make sure the labels is good quality. And then maybe you add a little bit synthetic data to it. And then you want to train the model, evaluate the model, and based on the evaluation, come and collect further data. So SceneBox does part of this equation. That's data curation, labeling, QA. And then what Applied does very well is data collection, indexing, and search. Now, with the connection of this tool, we can now close this loop, and then we can do that in a very iterative and quick fashion. So that's how we are enabling autonomous vehicles and autonomous trucks even to be able to scale and do much faster iteration around their development.
Is the faster iteration why a company would choose to use this SceneBox Applied instead of building it in-house? Because you can iterate faster, you can ship faster?
That's one reason. The second reason is that building this type of tools are usually complex, and they usually take anything between 6 months to come up with the first prototype, and then usually takes years to build a mature product. So it reduced time to market. And then also one of the main things is that we de-risk by bringing these tools is the risk of unknowns, right? So we have worked with a lot of customers, and then based on that, we have built tooling based on their development cycles. Like, if early stage autonomous vehicles or ADAS company wants to build something, they usually don't know what is expected, 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. But then, when they're using the tooling that has been used in that, they actually can not only get the tool, but also get the best practices. Also, that's how you can get a lot of value out of this type of already existing tooling rather than building them in-house.
Yeah, I would just add to that as well that it's really hard to build the stuff. We're now more than 6 years into the engineering work on our platform and have a huge user base all over the world. Let's say 5 years ago or even 4 years ago, if somebody was coming to us and they sort of saw what our offerings were at the time, and they had, let's say, a big budget on their end for developing these kinds of tools, back then, I think you could credibly and rationally say, okay, well, yeah, we don't necessarily know if this company is going to be around, and we think that we can build something like this, and so decide to make the in-house decision. But I think where we're at today, our platform, it's incredibly comprehensive. We're not going anywhere as a company, that's for sure. It's honestly insane at this point if you're starting off to make the decision to build in-house. It's just there's so much that exists in the industry at this point that in order to succeed in a capital efficient manner, you have to make use of what are the best available products. And I think ADP is solidly in that category today. And so we almost never at this point in time hear about, let's say, in-house as the other option, because the platform is so deep and so extensive, and it has so much support for customizability and extensions and all of these things that are just critical for building advanced autonomy systems. I think the value prop is just so overwhelmingly clear now in 2023.
What type of capital investment if somebody said, I want to build it in-house? Okay, Peter, now I'm going to build it in-house. What type of capital investment are they looking at? Obviously, you have the technical timeline, but it seems like you have to have a Warren Buffett type wallet to build this in-house.
You need like a backer like Google, right? Like you need almost a blank check to be able to support building all of this tech in-house at this point. Certainly, I think at tens of millions of dollars, you're just getting started, right? And at hundreds of millions of dollars, that's when you're talking about a really robust platform. And so we've certainly invested hundreds of millions of dollars into the development of our tooling platform.
As the CEO, you just put in your economic hat and says it makes a lot more sense to pay your fees than it does to build it in-house, because you're going to keep iterating and building a better product. And it focuses me to develop my driving stack, develop my ADAS. And so that's what I would do. I would outsource it to you. You're still only on the tip of the iceberg where you're going. Applied Intuition, you acquired Embark for $71 million in August. Word on the street is you acquired Embark because of their autonomous driving data to integrate it into the platform to further accelerate that platform. Why acquire Embark? Was it for the data? Was it for something else? Just what did you see?
Yeah, so Embark was a really interesting company. Embark, for those who are unfamiliar, they were a level 4 autonomous trucking company. So they were building a system that could drive trucks from effectively like one warehouse to another warehouse along a set of highways and do so very, very robustly. The company, I think, was roughly 7 years old when we did the acquisition. The business model in that area is tough. And so I think that they weren't able to really find product market fit for what they had developed. And then in terms of why it made sense for Applied, what was interesting was Embark was actually a longtime customer of the Applied tooling. And of course, we always want our offerings to be as comprehensive as possible, but we never hit 100% comprehensiveness of the platform. And so our customers, including Embark, they would, of course, build whatever they need to build around our platform to make it useful for their autonomy development. Embark had built a great set of tools that actually surrounded the Applied platform, and they had built an incredibly impressive autonomy trucking platform. And so with the acquisition, we are discontinuing the autonomy trucking program. We're not entering level 4 trucking, but we are going to be able to repurpose the tools that they had built around the Applied development platform. And in fact, bring some of those into our platform where it makes sense. Again, further contributing to the overall comprehensiveness of the platform and also obviously always thinking about the benefit to our customers. Embark had also driven well over 1 million miles of autonomous highway driving in their trucks, and they have an enormous corpus of data. Also, a lot of label data, And there's a lot of really interesting use cases that we have for that data. Just to give one simple example would be, we always want to have accurate behavior models of vehicles. And so they have an enormous data set for that. And we can now repurpose this into our platform, again, to benefit our customers. I think given the situation that Embark was in, I think it was a really great marriage of us being able to take advantage of the tremendous work that the team did there over 7 years and really now bring some of that value to the entire industry rather than having it concentrated in one company.
It was a great team. I remember before retirement, I got to go see Big Blue. That was the original Embark truck, was Big Blue. and that was fun. And they were always at the forefront. And Johnny Morris, I got to give you a shout out, buddy. You built a policy to allow Embark to do what they did. Is it the tools and the data? What type of advantages is that going to give you? Is that signaling to the market? At least to me, it signals that Applied's going into autonomous trucking. You see a very large opportunity, not from a driving standpoint, not from a truck, but from a data standpoint. Am I reading the market signals or the tea leaves right there?
We're actually very proud that we support a lot of the autonomous trucking players in market today. And so many, if not most of the autonomous trucking players, they actually are using our tooling platform. The assets that we're gaining from the Embark acquisition, I think, will just allow us to really further double down and even better support those customers. We ourselves are not entering autonomous trucking.
You're just enhancing your product for your existing customers, potential new customers, just making a good product, even a better product. Is that how you would pretty much sum that up?
That's exactly right.
Yaser, there's a lot of debate, and I always tend to get in the middle of this around the universal driver and developing different autonomy stacks. When ML models are developed for autonomous driving, do you need different models for each type of vehicle class, passenger car versus class 6 truck versus class 8 trucks? And for example, can you train an autonomous vehicle and autonomous truck with the same data set, or are we going into the universal driver debate again?
The answer to your question is that the state of the art right now, what can be deployed is that you have a specific model for each class of vehicle. Right? So, you cannot take a autonomy stack built on a passenger car and deploy it on a truck. That just simply doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that data that is collected from passenger vehicle is completely useless. There is a concept in machine learning, we call it transfer learning, that when the model sees some sort of data, if it's not exactly from the same camera, same situation, it still understands the structure of object, that understands color, it understands shapes and so on and so forth. So it's certainly useful, but at the end, you cannot use only one type of data in one domain and then train a model in a different domain. It would be useful, but at the end of the day, when you want to build autonomous trucks, you need data from very similar setting. That's the state of the art right now. Now, in the research community, we are seeing some foundational model that you see, like a driver model that drives a sedan can now drive a van, right? So we are seeing this that is coming out of the research community, but I think it's far from hitting the roads at this point.
From a transfer learning aspect, would an object be perhaps a stop sign? Would that be an object that could potentially transfer over since they're standardized, or a light, for example?
Yeah, it would be, but the way that the models see this type of object, it also has something with the way that this object is presented in the hardware itself. So at the end, if you're seeing an object from one lens, it might be different in a different type of camera. The same way that imagine if you put a set of glasses on and things are going to be warped and you won't feel safe driving in the first 2 hours if you put somebody else's glasses on. It's going to be exact same thing if you actually use one model for a different vehicle. You still need to build on top of it, but you still have the understanding of the objects, but then the positioning of them or coherence of them that might not be exactly accurate.
This is interesting. My first job ever was working in a camera store, so I have to ask you this because now I'm really curious. So we have a Carl Zeiss lens, you have a Nikkor Nikon lens, you have a Canon lens, different type of glass. You have the f-stop 2.8, the f-stop 4, and looking at the different cameras that are across your customers, either from passenger car to trucks, they're using different manufacturers. Does all that, so when you build the data sets, does it say, okay, this one was run on a Luminar LiDAR, this was run on a Sony camera, this was run on a Nikon camera? Since they all look at light differently, is that all going into this?
Yeah, it is all going into this. That's why it is complex. Yes. Yeah, a little bit of it is transferable, but at the end, you need proper data from those type of specific cameras and a specific hardware itself.
And just one of the really powerful points of the SceneBox platform is that it allows you actually to do the analysis to understand what the performance would be of the model given the different inputs that you have into the system. And so you can actually use SceneBox to understand how transferable, let's say from one sensor to another, would your model actually be.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now we're going to go into filters. Now, did you take in different lighting elements where if you're driving at dawn, you're driving in the morning or at night, do you put in those different lighting elements as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Those are also part of the equations, and then so it's a very common use case that you build a model for daytime and then see if that model performs or how badly or how accurate that model is at nighttime. So you want to make sure that you define metrics for all of these transfer learning model from one environment to another environment. And SceneBox actually would enable you to come up with this type of validation and metrics as well. Now, the other one this is also another kind of very interesting, powerful workflow is that through applied synthetic data, you can take one sort of environment and generate nighttime, daytime, and then we can actually synthetically generate not only photorealistic, but also physics-based, sensor outputs. And then you can bring all of that data to SceneBox and see how that type of data differs from the real data and if it is safe to actually mix these two data sets together to have a much richer training data set at much lower cost. So these are again, coming back to your earlier question, how do you plan to scale SceneBox? Is it this type of very powerful workflow that with the connection of SceneBox and applied development platform, we can actually enable this type of workflows.
I'm going to put the camera hat on one more time here. You become the Adobe Creative Suite for driving. There's no other way to describe it because for photography, I need the Adobe Creative Suite to do all the photography, and they're going to need the Applied Suite to do the self-driving. Peter, so this is really fascinating around the different lenses. Let's look at environments. You're working on off-road agriculture. There's mining applications. The construction autonomy business is absolutely booming. We're seeing a lot of that, especially in the Japanese market. Then there's dense driving around urban environments. We're seeing Cruise just announced Charlotte, North Carolina today. Way to go, Gil and Kyle, on that. And then you got on-highway driving. How specialized does this software get? Do you develop different environments where if you're running a John Deere tractor in Northern California on a farm versus driving in San Francisco or Charlotte, how specialized does that get?
Yeah. Oh man, this is a fun topic that I could talk about for a long time. So the short answer is quite specialized. The more nuanced answer is the base, the foundation of the tooling is all the same. And then there are specific variants for different verticals. And there's different technical challenges in each area, right? So let's just use a few examples. Of course, for on-road autonomy, you're thinking about lanes, you're thinking about traffic lights, you're thinking about pedestrian traffic, all of those things. That's a very different set of challenges from, let's say, farming autonomy, where you're thinking of rows of crops in a field, and you're thinking about potentially actually manipulating the soil, whether that's pulling crops or actually digging rows. And these all have different implications on the system. There's also different problems that you deal with. In a construction use case, you're going to be thinking a lot more about dust and how is dust affecting the sensors on the system and dirt. And then if you're thinking about on-road use cases, you're maybe thinking a little more about, okay, what about snow and rain that you'd experience in ordinary driving? So our goal is that we want to support all of these different use cases to the fullest extent. But a user of the tool should not think that it was, let's say, not designed to the fullest extent for their use case. As in, somebody who's using the tooling for construction automation should feel entirely like this tooling is for construction automation. And somebody's using it for on-road autonomy should feel like it's entirely for on-road autonomy. And so we have a few different technical ways of doing that in the product, but that's what we're always aiming for.
The product's built for the use case, it seems.
That's right. And then for us, of course, having this base that is common across everything, and then having some specific aspects that apply to each different vertical.
Yeah, so I'm going back to camera world again and looking at filters. So if you're going to operate in a farm, it's a rugged environment. You're going to operate in construction, it's a rugged environment. What impact is putting a filter or some sort of sealant around the lens? What impact does that have as they develop the models?
So when you have that type of filter and sealant, then actually your model kind of learns that sealant, right? So you have to understand that how does that affect your safety and your coverage, right? And then you want to make sure that the model that you're developing for that environment actually, completely covers all of the corner cases. So you need to be able to actually do a lot of simulations around your hardware stack and then your software stack, and you want to make sure that by applying those type of filters or those sealants, you don't limit the performance of the stack. So again, that comes back again to like the tooling that we build in terms of operational design domain, and then also simulation testing. So we can ask a lot of what if questions and then run many different scenarios and make sure that the stack that now we have built with this type of filters and covers actually do perform with the desired criteria.
Peter, looking at environments, you have a contract with the Department of Defense. You're doing stuff in the defense industry. Theater is rough. It's a rough environment when you're out in theater. How is the defense industry utilizing Applied's platform?
Yeah, so we think about our defense business a bit separately from our commercial business. I think there's obviously good reasons for that, and there are certain capabilities and functions in our defense-focused product that only exist in that product. I would say we're an American company. We do view that it's an important part for us to support obviously our country and the defense ecosystem. And we're proud of the work that we've done there, and we're currently working with the Defense Innovation Unit and also AFWorks and supporting their mission and objectives. And there's generally speaking many interesting use cases of autonomy, of course, in defense. And we want to, of course, make our tooling platform available to the United States.
Thank you. Point blank, thank you for not running away from defense. Thank you for doing the right thing and supporting the Defense Department, because at the end of the day, autonomy will save lives, and it's really going to help these men and women that go put their lives on the line for us. So thank you for supporting them, because they need all the support they can get, and autonomy is going to be very good for forces. Peter, as you as CTO develop the platform with your team, do you utilize your customers' data for your own model training?
I would even go as far to say absolutely not. Our customers' data, it belongs to our customers, and we don't see it. It's strictly theirs. So they're using our tooling platform for their development, but their data belongs to them and is theirs only. Our customers, of course, they're investing an enormous amount to build their own systems. And there are, of course, a lot of components of those systems that are very proprietary and are very much their special sauce. And certainly their data is an important part of what enables our customers to really build their special sauce for their own products. But using our tools, of course, they can get a lot more value out of that data themselves.
Yaser, SceneBox had the same policy that Peter described at Applied. Was that one of the reasons why you decided to join Applied, because your values align?
Yeah, absolutely. We put customer first above everything else, and then customers' data is sacred. So we don't want to touch it. We want to respect it as its fullest. So among many other values, I think that was one of the values that I really appreciated, coming to Applied. So yeah. To
me, it seems that it frees you up just to focus on making a really great product instead of doing your own model training.
That is very true. Correct. Yeah.
Peter, how are Applied synthetic databases developed?
It's really quite a scientific process. So we have a synthetic datasets product, which enables our customers to build their own synthetic datasets. We also offer a set of reference synthetic datasets that are more generic, which customers can then use to improve their performance on specific types of things that their vehicles need to detect. Effectively, it comes generally from a study of where is your model underperforming and what type of data is missing in your real world data set. And once you have that level of understanding, then you can figure out what additional data from a synthetic data set would actually be helpful. Where would it actually improve the overall model performance? And that's where you can use the superpower of synthetic data, which is the fact that you don't actually need a bunch of real data if you can accurately create the synthetic data for it. And so it is a scientific process of understanding where are you underperforming, where are the holes in your real data, and then where can you cost effectively create the synthetic data to sort of fill those holes to ultimately achieve a higher performing model.
Yeah, another advantage of synthetic data is that it comes with labels automatically. So, and this is like, perfect labels that otherwise when you're collecting raw data from real environments, you actually have to spend millions of dollars in labeling all of these data sets.
It goes back to the theme of this conversation is scalability. While you have scalability, you need validation. And Peter, applied as a partnership with NI to provide an end-to-end solution across the ADAS and autonomous driving validation workflow. Why is this important? And in your opinion, will certifications for autonomous driving systems become mandatory in the future?
Yeah, so we've done, I think, a lot of interesting work with National Instruments. For those who aren't familiar, NI has a really interesting offering for hardware in the loop. So they produce these machines that allow you to test real hardware in a very deterministic fashion with really excellent timing characteristics. And we can connect our tooling platform to some of the National Instruments products to provide a more complete solution to our customers that allow them to test real hardware instead of testing just software. And so the validation component, that's really the step of understanding that the results that you get on real hardware are consistent with what you were expecting just from the software tests. Obviously, it goes many layers deeper than that, but that's the highest level concept. With regards to certifications, I think that it's going to depend on the locale. Europe is generally more forward, more ahead in terms of thinking about certifications and regulation. The US tends to be, let's say, a little bit more free market, a little bit less regulation, or at least tends to lag the European regulation. And then different markets, for example, Japan, Korea, China, they each have their own way of looking at this. But certainly, I think that for any automaker that wants to launch a solution globally, they're thinking a lot about certifications. And that's because no matter what, there's always going to be some market that's the furthest ahead in certifications. And if you want to sell into that market, you need to get those certifications. I think tooling, it's absolutely going to be part of that. I think the general trend is that if you look at, for example, the Euro NCAP tests, there's a set of physical real-world tests that are part of the Euro NCAP suite. And that makes sense. It's always important to have real-world tests, but they're fairly limiting in terms of what you can actually test. Like if you're limited by, I have a real vehicle and I have, let's say, a dummy pedestrian and I have a test track and I have a week or a day to complete this test, there's only so much you can do. Whatever you can't get to in that day is a little bit unknown. And that's where simulation and tooling becomes so important, because you use the real world tests to check that the simulations are working correctly. Like, yes, the results match. I'm getting the same result in sim as I see in the real world. And once I have that confidence, now I can run a million different simulations, every imaginable combination, and get a much better understanding of the actual behavior of the system. And so when I think forward 1, 3, 5, 10 years to what's certification, what's regulation going to look like in the future, I think simulation is going to play a much larger role than it does today. The end result is we have safer, more capable vehicles that are ultimately operating towards the benefit of society.
You can get to the point where an insurance underwriter, for example, will demand it, or a regulatory body will demand it. Do you think that certifications go all the way down to the software layer, where you're going to have to get it? So Applied will have to go get a certain certification. Do you think that's how far it will go down?
It's hard to predict exactly what different locales around the world will do. But I mean, let's say if you look at aviation as an extreme example, software in aviation is extremely regulated, and I think for good reason, right? I mean, if you look at, obviously there are notable counter examples, but in general, airplanes are quite safe, especially commercial airliners. And that is because there are real standards on both hardware and software that are enforced against the companies that are making those systems. I don't think automotive will ever reach the state of that level of regulation, but I do think that as we get more towards the phase of more companies wanting to do things like remove the steering wheel from cars, which again, it will happen. It's a matter of time. Right now, there's just a handful, but it will happen eventually. I think that's where the certifications and regulations become more interesting.
The automotive industry, the autonomy industry can learn a lot from aviation, and we're only going to continue to learn from aviation. I mentioned Gil West, former COO of Delta Airlines. He's COO of Cruise. And if you look at the way that Cruise is scaling, they're scaling like an airline. And so they're learning a lot there, but they're going to learn a lot from the safety. They're going to learn a lot from how do you launch a vehicle, how do you land a vehicle. So we're going to learn a lot there. And Yaser, I was reading this blog that you wrote that to spark this. On February 10th, you wrote an insightful post on Medium. It was just flat out awesome is how I would describe it, where you compared ChatGPT to ADAS and autonomous vehicles. And I want to quote from the post for this, end quote. ChatGPT and AVs are not as similar as they may seem. ChatGPT is an assistive technology designed to help us with tasks and make our lives easier. AVs, on the other hand, are autonomous systems designed for the high-risk and unpredictable world of transportation. The difference between assistive and autonomous is what makes ChatGPT and ADAS more alike and what sets AVs apart, end quote. Very much so, but do you think the public understands this, or are they prepared to put too much trust in a ChatGPT the same way that they do with ADAS today?
Before answering that question, I actually wanted to highlight something about that article itself. The article is actually an experimentation on ChatGPT. The way that I used to write articles, I used to work with a copywriter and then go back and forth for a few days to come up with the perfect article. This one actually was written by ChatGPT as a copywriter, and I wrote that in under 7 minutes. So I came up with a few prompts, went back and forth. I said, change it this way, change it the other way. And it got to that perfect state in 7 minutes. So it was really a fantastic assistive technology to me that took me from zero to a nicely written article that now you quote in this wonderful podcast in 7 minutes. So that's a background on this article. Now, the question on does the public understand that if they are prepared to put much trust in ChatGPT and something like ADAS, I think the key here is trust. And then the trust is usually earned. And that's, I think, is the right approach to autonomy, either for driving or for technologies like ChatGPT, that they come in different levels. The first level is almost assistive. So the human operator, even when you're writing an email or you want to drive, you want to actually validate the result of this assistive technology. And then when you feel comfortable enough, you essentially take your hands off, either if it's driving or if it is writing an email, right? So I think that the public completely understands that because it's a natural process for humans to understand anything, including technology.
Peter, in your opinion, what is the future of autonomy?
I think that at some point in the future, everything that moves will be autonomous. And there's enormous engineering challenges that exist between where we are today and that future. But I think that the industry is moving quickly. And I think that with tools like what we develop at Applied, all of these things, they are within line of sight. If you think about the tooling keeps getting better, the algorithms keep getting better, everything across the industry continues to advance forward. From my perspective, autonomy just keeps getting more and more exciting. I know there's talk of, there's the trough of disillusionment, whatever. I totally don't buy that at all. As an insider, it just keeps getting more exciting because we just keep seeing things advance and advance and advance. The big challenge will be, of course, how to deploy these things safely and at scale. And that very much directly relates to our mission at Applied, helping our customers do that. And I think that if we look forward 5 or 10 years, there will be an enormous impact on society from autonomy. And of course, we at Applied, we want to have a very positive impact in that domain.
Autonomy will be positive. Autonomy is going to usher in what I call the autonomy economy. And last week, I had the honor and the privilege of attending the JP Morgan Autos Conference. And I will sum it up to you this way. from the institutional investors, autonomy is investable. There's a lot of capital, billions of dollars on the sideline that are looking to enter the space because they see the rollout of the autonomy economy. Yaser, in your opinion, what is the future of autonomy?
Yeah, so like Peter said, I do believe everything that is in physical space moves, it's going to be autonomous. And then what I also believe is that not only the interaction with the environment becomes intelligent, also the learning of the systems would be seamless and almost autonomous. And then the way that I'm thinking about autonomy, you will have all of these intelligent agents that are learning constantly by interacting with the environment. Not too dissimilar from a baby when she's learning from her environment. The key difference is that autonomous systems, they can learn as a fleet. That learning is transferable. So you can actually have an agent that has learned to do something in the space, and then you can copy that to a different agent, or you can scale that up. It's a very exciting environment. And then while there's so much happening, I don't think we even crossed the chasm. So I think we are just scratching the surface. I think soon enough, I hope in our lifetime, we will see, in building directed autonomously, you can see almost in everything that needs to be happening in the physical space to be done by autonomous agents and at scale. So yeah, it's a very fascinating field, probably the most fascinating field that I can ever think of.
I agree. Putting it into baseball terms, we're merely in the top of the first inning of a 9-inning baseball game. Gentlemen, as we look to wrap up this insightful conversation where you both correctly said in the future, everything that moves will be autonomous, what would you like our listeners to take away with them today? And Yaser, we'll start with you, sir, please.
Yeah, so we are getting into a really, really exciting phase of autonomy. So what I would like our listeners to take from this is to make sure that they learn from all of the best practices out there, either through tooling or through knowledge transfer somehow. So building things from scratch usually takes a lot of time. So rely on best practice, because there's already a lot of capital that takes us from zero to where we are right now.
Peter, your thoughts, please?
I would, of course, just first mention that Applied Intuition is hiring, and so any great engineers who are listening would love to have you join. I think that when we look forward to the next 5 to 10 years, this might be the most exciting time period in all of autonomy development, because we're just at the phase, as Yaser mentioned, where the line of sight is absolutely there. We know it needs to be done, and now it's about engineering and execution work. It's not a giant research question anymore, and that's really, I think, where you get the most fun set of challenges, and that's why I think we at Applied we're so motivated to keep working hard so that our customers can actually get their systems to market and start the deployment of these systems at scale.
We're entering the phase of autonomous commercialization. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is scaling applied intuition. Peter, Yaser, thank you so much for coming on the road to autonomy today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Grayson. It's great to be here.
If you've enjoyed listening, please kindly rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Want to get in touch? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Road to Autonomy, or email podcast@roadtoautonomy.com. The Road to Autonomy podcast is produced by the Road to Autonomy LLC. The views and opinions expressed on the Road to Autonomy podcast do not necessarily reflect those views of the Road to Autonomy, its subsidiaries, its shareholders, directors, investors, or partners. The content discussed on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be taken as legal, investment, tax, or business advice. Nothing is a recommendation that you purchase, sell, or hold any security or other investment, or that you pursue any investment style or strategy. The content of this podcast is presented on an as-is basis with no warranties, express or implied, of any kind. Financial mentions about companies in the Road to Autonomy Index and discussions about the Road to Autonomy Indexes are for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon when making any investment decision. Furthermore, an inclusion of security within the Road to Autonomy Index is not a recommendation by the Road to Autonomy Indices LLC to buy, sell, or hold that such security, nor is it considered to be investment advice.